Oh, thank you very much. I was thinking that we get to sit down, and because half of you are standing up, other people don't get to sit down. Would you guys all like to sit down? It's much easier sitting down than... How about that? It's so much easier on all the old people's knees. We know what it's like.
They're younger than you, Jason.
There you go. It's comfy. We've had the ground swept and licked clean, I promise you.
Now, obviously, there's
this is the only place in the world where it's appropriate to take my Star Trek badge out. This is my captain's badge. And I never get to use it.
Do you keep that on you all the time?
No, I brought I brought it here especially. I stole it from the set. Because, one second.
Yeah, I'll hold that.
This is my Star Trek t-shirt. But, I made the mistake on Harry Potter of not stealing any props or taking any photographs. It was a big mistake, and so I stole everything that wasn't nailed down on Star Trek. The badge being the first of many things.
Now, before we get on to Star Trek, you've probably noticed around EESA today, there have been a lot of Star Wars characters.
Yes.
The odd Stormtrooper. And you actually do have a little connection with Star Wars.
I am the voice of the Inquisitor in Star Wars Rebels. Apparently, thank you for that single clap from the one person.
He was surprised too, so he didn't.
If you do that again, I'll have to throw you a fish. But the thing is, I've never seen it. Apparently it's very good. I do know they sell the Inquisitor dolls everywhere. They sell all the dolls and the Funko heads. And I have the coolest lightsaber in the Star Trek universe. I have a Star Wars universe. I have a spinning red lightsaber, apparently. Which is nice to know. It's useful, because I have the coolest wand in the Harry Potter world as well.
But you're not so nice there, are you?
Well, it depends on your point of view, obviously.
Well, for those
very
of us
popular
on the
with the Death Eaters. In fact, you'd be amazed the number of people come up at conventions and show me proudly that they've got the dark mark, the Death Eater stuff on their arm. And as a father of two girls, and they're often young people, I go, oh, that's lovely. You'll be so glad when you're 60. You know that.
Now, you liked Marvel comics as a child, I believe.
Well, I liked all comics. So those people who know that England is famous for its haute cuisine, our fabulous food, fish and chips being the national dish of England, on Sundays we would go and have fish and chips, and my dad would buy them from the fish and chip shop, and I would go next door, and the shop next door was a sweet shop and a newsagent, and they had boxes of second-hand comics. I was always allowed to buy one comic, so I've read all of the Marvel and DC comics from the 60s, but in the wrong order. So my ideas of the stories are much more surreal than the actual stories are.
Who was your favourite character? Because I used to read them too, and because my name is Sue,
right.
I loved the Fantastic Four
because
it had a character in it called Sue Storm. So I would play Sue Storm.
Of course.
Which is a bit boring in
Did you walk around hoping that...
Yeah, I was just invisible.
Trying to be invisible?
Yeah. What about you?
Mine was much more destructive. I loved Daredevil, because Daredevil, as far as I remember, of course remember, I read the comics out of sequence. I may have missed the important ones. But in my version of Daredevil, he had no magic powers, and he taught himself to sense the world with just 2 sticks. And so I got 2 sticks and blindfolded myself and destroyed all the crockery in my household. Went around just knocking things off the shelves and poking my brothers in the eye. Yeah.
So you obviously had a bit of a, you were leaning towards science fiction. Were you a fan of Star Trek? Please don't say no.
I was a fan, yeah. So growing up, there were only 3 channels on television in Britain. In fact, probably 2, but 3 from when I remember it. And we argue. My family and I have 3 brothers. We fight. We still fight all the time. We argued about everything with my mum and dad as well. The only thing we didn't argue about is when Star Trek came on telly. We all loved Star Trek. But what's amazing about it, and the reason I think it's still going 60 years later, 50 years later, is that I watched it for the stories. I thought the stories were just great. And now that I watch those episodes again as an adult, I realise how political they were, how controversial they were, how they were addressing racism and misogyny and civil rights movement, the Cold War. But I didn't get any of that. In fact, the one episode that gave me nightmares when I was a child was called Miri, and it's about this planet they land on. There's only teenagers there. There's only young kids there, and as soon as people become teenagers and adolescents, they get this kind of purple growing Play-Doh disease on them, and they die, they disappear. And that starts to happen to Kirk and Spock and Bones and stuff. And I watched it, and I was terrified of getting this disease when I was a kid. I didn't realise until I was this age, and I have 2 teenage daughters, that it's a parable about the horrors of puberty. And that's what it's really about. So it worked on so many different levels, Star Trek. And I think I've learned a lot about what being a grown-up was, what being a man was, from Kirk and Spock, the 2 opposite dichotomies.
Now, there have been quite a few captains. Kirk, obviously, there's been Janeway, and obviously more recently yourself.
Sir Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, oh, Picard, we love Picard. And did you find, because your character was so different to all of them, not necessarily one that people could look up to as a virtuous,
well, that's telling you a lot about yourself,
captain. Is that what made you want to play him? The fact that he was surprising?
I just say, my two daughters are so uninterested in me, which I don't blame them. They just walked away, and I caught their face as they're walking away now. This embarrassed, blushing grin about, Dad, it's you, we're walking away right now. We hear this bullshit at home. Bye, girls. Sorry. No, I didn't want to do a captain. I didn't want to be in Star Trek at all, to be honest with you. They said we're redoing Star Trek, and I thought, I'm not going to do it, because I grew up thinking that I'm kind of worshipping Captain Kirk, and it was done so brilliantly, and then it's been done really well since then. Why would I ever walk in those shadows? And then I read the story, and it was so unlike the others. And it was a single story. It wasn't episodes that repeated, went back to zero every time. It was like a novel instead of short stories. And there was an opportunity with Captain Lorca. He was so unlike every other captain. I thought there won't be any comparisons. It's a whole new Star Trek for a new generation, and born out of our interesting, complicated, troubled times. With Trump in the White House, it felt like the right time to tell that story. And I didn't think that people would go, well, it's not like the Star Trek I grew up with, because it was a new thing. It's on streaming, so it's much more adult.
Who's seen Star Trek Discovery here?
Oh.
Isn't it amazing? Yeah.
Oh, stop it.
No, it is. I was a big original series fan with Kirk, and for me, I mean, I loved Janeway and the Borg and Seven of Nine, but to me, Discovery was wow.
I'll tell you what I liked about it. It's a bit like, there is this argument you can make about Obama being president. Forget the things he did in office. The fact that a black man was elected to be president of America is an incredibly important, powerful symbol for our times. And whether or not you watch Discovery, the fact that a young black woman is the lead was incredibly important, just like Doctor Who is my friend Jodie now. And I have two daughters, and I want them to be looking around and seeing, like we come to EESA today, and we see women in all the important roles, and they need to be, this is a generation that should be told, and are being told, that there's no doors closed to you and there's no glass ceiling. So what was amazing when they announced the show is how many people pretending to be Star Trek fans online showered us all with hatred, going, how dare you, and you're so politically correct, and what are all these women of colour doing in powerful positions? And if you clicked on their feeds, their Twitter feeds or Instagram feeds, they were all white supremacists from white supremacist groups. Because real Star Trek fans know that that's what Star Trek was always about. It was always about confronting prejudice.
And that's true, because I made a radio documentary about Star Trek quite a while ago, and met Nichelle Nichols, who was Uhura. And she told me, and you probably heard it, she often repeats this story, that she she wanted to give up the role because she felt she wasn't getting enough lines. It was just hailing on all frequencies, Captain. And it was Martin Luther King who told her, please don't give up, because you are showing us there is a black woman on the bridge of the USS Enterprise.
I met the first black African-American woman astronaut, and she became an astronaut because of Uhura. May. I met May, who was amazing and introduced us in New York, and she became an astronaut. She went into space because she'd seen Uhura on television. So, yeah.
Well, that's true. In fact, a lot of scientists often cite Star Trek as the reason and the inspiration for them becoming a scientist. When you were on set, I know you've got the cameras around you and what have you. Was there ever a moment with the blue screen and seeing space, you did see space behind you, where you thought, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm on a spaceship? Or was it always, no, I know I'm at work sort of thing?
I'm on a set in Toronto. I'm wearing a costume that squeezes the life out of you like a human party balloon, like a balloon animal. There's 20 cameras on me, and I'm starving, because if you ate even a tomato, you look like you were pregnant. No, I never thought I was in space. I did think I was in Star Trek, though. I mean, the first time I said, energize, or faces to fall, or something. Well, the first time we did, it's amazing technology now. If you watch the show, it looks like any other giant special effects show. They're perfect and seamless. Not like the 60s version where the walls wobbled and the Gorn is a man in a very bad pantomime suit. But you still have that technology where you're standing at the bridge and they go, all right, click, you know, rockets coming in, 3, 2, 1, you know, all that stuff. And yeah, when those things happen, I thought I was in Star Trek, but I never for a second thought I was in space, partly because even with the discomfort of this horrible medieval torture of the suit, I wasn't going through what the astronauts go through. I was just hearing, so we've been having a little tour around, my daughters and I, and asking the questions always asked, like, how do the astronauts go to the toilet, you know, things like that. And it turns out that one of the physical problems astronauts have is kidney stones. I was just told about kidney stones, and when you go for the idea of going to Mars, it's one thing going up the ISS or going to the moon, but if you go to Mars and you have kidney stones and you have to wait 2 years to get them treated, what would you do? Why do they have kidney stones? Because they don't drink enough. And why don't they drink enough? Because they don't like going to the toilet, apparently.
We can all relate to that. If
Like
you're,
having a 4-year-old.
you're a woman on a train, we all know that, don't we? We really don't want to go. We don't.
So in that aspect, it was like being in space because nobody wanted to have to take this thing. It took like 12 people on a winch to get it on in the morning. So it's already, the future in Discovery is a very diverse thing. Every colour, you know, every race, every ethnicity, every sexuality, even other species are all equal. We're having a good time down there. Should we all go down there? But it turns out that, but body size, not necessarily. In the future, we should all still look like stick insects, so we're all winched into our costumes in the morning. And I think that discomfort is something we do share with astronauts.
Now, I know you're probably not allowed to tell us, but I'm going to ask anyone, because we all want to know, don't we? Will you be coming back?
What, here?
Tumbleweed, yeah. On Star Trek Discovery.
Oh my God, you nearly got me there.
Oh, yeah,
what a genius journalist you are. It's like sitting with Sherlock Holmes.
I know. Well, if I didn't ask, I know that people would be
But
like...
the truth is that, particularly with this version of Star Trek, it's one story. So to tell anybody anything about what happens, either this season or in future seasons, is to ruin it for them. It's like saying, oh, you're going to tell that favourite joke, just give us a hint of the punchline. So the joy of a journey through a story or through music or anything is not knowing where it's going next. It's one of the reasons I don't like to do revivals on the stage in theatre, because people go and they watch, you know, King Lear, and they go and they start comparing you to the other 7 King Lears they've seen. I'd rather take people on a journey for a fresh
and that
story.
journey itself, I won't give it away, because there may be people here who've not seen the entire series yet. If not, shame on you. But there is quite a reveal at the end, so I'm not going to say what it is. But I would just like to know, did you know at the very beginning what the reveal was going to be?
One of the things that makes it such a rich journey, and one of the reasons I signed up for it, is that it's proper storytelling. So there's long-term secrets and big twists that you know, you didn't seed it 10 minutes before, you seeded it 5 episodes before, or 8 episodes before. In fact, lots of people binge it because it's online, so you could wait till the end and then binge the whole thing. And yeah, the great joy as an actor, the 5-course banquet as an actor, is to have a secret. You want to have a secret. In fact, the Holy Trinity, when it happens, is when a camera's pointing at you, your character is saying or doing one thing, they mean something entirely different, but they're actually driven by a third thing that they don't understand about themselves, and we, the audience, understand. That's great storytelling with a camera. And I had secrets. I had a fantastic secret. Numbers of the characters in the show have secrets that are revealed piecemeal. If you watch it for a second time, who hasn't seen The Sixth Sense? Cover your ears. If you see The Sixth Sense, you watch the movie for a second time, you go, oh, do you know? Obviously. So if you watch Discovery for a second time, you'll see that I knew all the way through. Before I took the job, I knew what the big reveals would be. And then I see little Easter eggs all the way through the show.
Now, your original training and background was as a lawyer. Now, I think, you know, if you're a lawyer, you're very analytical, sort of the same sort of skills in a way that scientists need to have in terms of being rational and approaching things in a very methodical way.
Yeah, objective.
So, did you ever consider science at all?
No, I love maths. So I'm Jewish. I'm completely secular and atheist, but I was raised Jewish, and I took the opportunity to take every single Jewish holiday off school I could, and every other holiday that came up any way I could. And I feel like I missed some key days in school when basic concepts were explained, and I got back and I never caught up. So I'm now, as an adult, incredibly curious about really simple things that I don't understand about how the world works. And it bothers me because I think I'm relatively smart and, you know, flexible and able to pick up quick learner. But there were some basic scientific concepts I missed, and I had very dull teachers. I come from that tradition, that British educational tradition, I don't know if it's the same here, where they line you up in rows, they cram you full of knowledge, and then they test you. and I did pretty well in the subjects I did well in, and I missed something key in science. So no, I never thought about being a scientist.
All right. So I won't ask you how to explain quantum entanglement for the...
If you gave me a script, I could do it. I'm very committed. It's like Jeff Goldblum plays a lot of scientists. I met Jeff Goldblum. I wouldn't trust him to be a toilet attendant. I don't mind the space, but it'd be great with jazz piano.
Great stuff. So in terms of...
By the way, you do realise, you didn't introduce me in there, but Star Trek is one qualification. We're at EESA here. This is the right place to say it. I'm the smartest man on the planet. Do you know that?
No.
I was in Armageddon. And I was offered to play one of the astronauts in Armageddon, but I was busy doing something else. So they offered me a consolation prize for playing the scientist that I don't really want to do, but I quite fancied. I missed the chance to go in the Vomit Comet. You know, the plane that does those big parabolas.
Oh, I've actually done that.
You
Jason Isaacs has called me a bastard.
Oh,
My life
no.
is incomplete.
Anyway, I missed that to go to the centrifuge and all those things. But I did get to go to NASA, and I went in the space shuttle and the stealth bomber and all these various other things. But I played the scientist, Professor Quincy, and I was introduced in the scene as the smartest man on the planet. And so that's how they call me. From then on, they go, "Can we get the smartest man on the planet to the set, please?" So no, I meet people who are in Armageddon, they go, "The smartest man on the planet." And the space world is the only world in which people still remember that.
Okay. Well, I must admit, there are quite a lot of fans of the Simon Mayo podcast, and numerous people tweeted me to say, you must try and get the International Space Station or somebody to say hello to Jason Isaacs, which is another sort of, you never know, that could well happen.
It's a strange
meme. Sort of a catchphrase on the podcast.
It is a strange meme. It's a thing, somebody said to me, it's one of the most downloaded podcasts in Europe, it's a film review program, and they said hello to me one day, and then someone else said hello back in a letter, and then it has a life of its own. You can buy mugs with it on, t-shirts with it on. People put it in their wedding vows and graduation speeches. But so I've been in some very remote places, up on a mountain somewhere or in a plane, and people walk up out of the blue and they go, "Hello to Jason Isaacs." And walk up. And it's, I once was literally on a mountaintop, and from the neighbouring mountaintop I heard, "Hello to Jason Isaacs." But if I'm with someone who doesn't listen to the podcast, they always go, "What the fuck?" It's hard to explain.
Now, I know we're here for space, but because we have got a few younger Harry Potter fans in the audience, I think, do you get the same love, or do children tend to want to steer clear of
children have absolutely,
the ones who are showing you the scars?
No, children have absolutely no idea who I am, because
you've not got long white hair.
I don't look like Lucius Malfoy. Why would Lucius Malfoy be standing in a local supermarket buying fish? You know, it would be very odd. What happens, I think this happens quite a lot, parents drag their children up to me, because they recognise me from something else, Star Trek or, you know, whatever, Death of Stalin, something, and they go, "Look who it is." And the kids go, "It's in America often," and they'll go, "Could you tell them who you are?" And I go, "Oh, hello, I'm an actor." And they go, "Yeah, but tell them what you were in." I said, "Well, I've been in a lot of things." "You would tell them the thing." I go, "I was Lucius Malfoy in the Harry Potter films." They go, "No, you weren't." "Okay, hey, nice to meet you." The person goes, "No, could you do the voice?" And I go, "You know, I'm buying toilet paper. Is it appropriate?" Yeah, so I'm dragged into this awful situation. So kids have no idea who I am, as they shouldn't. So when I was shooting Harry Potter, I had kids to visit every day over the 10 years. Alan Rickman and I had a long-running competition who would have the most visitors. Every single day that I filmed, I had at least 5 kids in, and they would lay on an extra assistant to take them to all the sets and the menagerie and the special effects workshop and the construction place, and they'd get to come to the set and call cut and action and all this stuff. And invariably the parents would go, "This is the biggest day ever." They're so excited. They've read every book. They love it. And the kids would be absolutely catatonic. I mean, just nothing, like they were a statue. And they go, "I don't know why they're not speaking. Say something. Say something. You know, ask the question you asked in the car." And they say nothing. And I think it's partly because it was ruining it for them. Kids shouldn't meet me. They shouldn't know it's me. When they came to the set, they see Hagrid standing outside having a cigarette and arguing with his wife. It's not, you know, it doesn't help the magic, suspend the disbelief.
No, you're right, because my son, who is actually here, he was backstage at Disneyland in Paris and saw Mickey Mouse having a cigarette.
Yes.
It's not
when my daughter was 3, I think, we went to the park and SpongeBob was having a very special kind of cigarette at the park, which you'll know more about in Holland.
This is the Netherlands. They don't mind.
And they said, and she said, "Is that SpongeBob?" And I went, "That's SpongeBob's cousin." That's the best I could come up with.
Now, we've been sort of discussing some of the science fiction and other aspects of Jason's career. And now we're going to bring on a couple of scientists
who actually know something about science.
Yeah,
Thank God for that.
Who do know something about the science, but they too probably like the science fiction because they make science fiction a reality. So I'm going to welcome onto the stage two people. We're going to have, hopefully they are ready. They're being dragged onto the set. We've got, first of all, we've got Armel Hubold, who is a spacecraft operations engineer.
Woo!
Now, do you remember that fantastic mission, Rosetta, going to Comet 67P? Well, she's worked on it right from the beginning as a spacecraft operations engineer, and is currently the same job for ExoMars. So now and in fact she beats...
What's ExoMars? Come on, not everybody knows it.
It's a European mission to Mars. We know that, don't we? There's an orbiter already, the TGO already at Mars. And in fact, whereas Jason was a captain, she's also worked on the cluster fleet of satellites, so she's been an admiral of the fleet. Wow. She tops you. She tops you. And our next guest from the European Space Agency, because you know Star Trek is all about new life, new civilizations. Well, she is an exobiologist, and that's exactly what exobiologists study, is life elsewhere from Earth in space. So please welcome Nicole Kaplan. Right, and before we start...
Oh, Nicole's got something very interesting in her hands there. What's it
Well, actually...
I'll give it to you.
Oh, great!
Well, I'm going to say this is unquestionably a tardigrade of some kind.
That's correct.
And there's a Star Trek Discovery connection
there.
So
in Star Trek Discovery there was a thing, it's about 100 times bigger and it'll rip your head off and take Klingons apart, which this one doesn't look like it could.
It's a much cuter version.
It could be like a gremlin, you could, if you water it after midnight. But I didn't know tardigrades existed.
They're a thing.
Did they exist in space?
We send them to space, and then they exist in space. Who knows?
So cruel.
Maybe they're...
okay, well, as we are talking life elsewhere, anybody recognise this? Yeah, so this is our first mystery object. We've got a second one. The batteries not included. They've been taken out to come across, so there's no battery, so it won't purr. So what is that?
That looks like...
A hat.
Either a Ushanka or something that Donald Trump might wear.
It's not orange enough. It's not orange enough. And that is obviously, who knows what that is? Tribble, yeah, absolutely. Now, what the sort of life that you study, or want to study exobiologists, is a tribble way too complex or too simple?
Well, it's quite big. In exobiology, we send microorganisms, so really, really small stuff. And I don't know, is this to scale?
I'm hoping so. It is actually official. It is an official Star Trek tribble.
Ah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just for those people who watch Discovery, we have a tribble in the first episode, and it disappeared afterwards, and people wonder why did the tribble disappear from my desk. It's because I loved it. I wanted it was a prop. First of all, I was tempted to stroke it in every scene. And the other thing is that it made a bit of a noise, a little like, as it moved around, and the sound engineers hated it. So every time I get a scene, I go, can I do the scene with the tribble? They go, yeah, bring the tribble to the set. And they go, should we just shoot one without it while it comes on the way? And they were always lying to me. For 9 months they lied, and I never saw it again.
So if you're dealing in microorganisms then, rather than lovely cute tribbles...
Oh, the microorganisms are still cute.
Oh, really?
You just see them with the naked eye. Down the microscope, lovely, delightful.
And so, how do you do these experiments then? Do you take them on board the International Space Station?
That's right, we prepare them for launch. Sometimes we desiccate them or freeze them, and then we launch them onto the ISS, and often we will hydrate them on board.
So you dry them?
So you dry them first.
And then rehydrate them?
And rehydrate them once they're up there.
But you mean, essentially, you freeze them? It's a state of suspended animation. They're frozen and then you reanimate them?
That's right.
So they survive that process?
God.
We didn't go that far. No, but they're super interesting. One of the ones that you're holding there, the pink one, That's a rotifer. Now the reason
I knew that, I was going to say that.
Now the reason that example is pink, they're not pink in real life, they're actually translucent.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
But the interesting thing about them is they are mostly female. And populations of them are mostly female. So they are an example of a world run by women.
Oh. So we're a bit of an Amazon situation.
So by mostly female, you mean most of them are female or most of it is female?
No, most of them are female. So they reproduce asexually, but the males that are produced don't have much of a function.
So a bit like real life.
Yeah, they're just there for...
Decoration.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, not me.
It's a good life, I aspire to it.
So they're really, really resistant to many stresses that we find on Earth. So you will find them, firstly, in most freshwater habitats, so your garden pond, rivers, stream, not this big, not this big.
All that pink, I assume.
Or that pink, no, again, translucent. But they are great candidates for space flight. Because they are highly resistant to radiation.
Can I ask a stupid but serious question?
There are no stupid questions.
Why bother?
Why bother?
Why bother sending them up there to space to test them in space? Why not just test it down here? Why test it at all? Honestly.
So many questions. Well, in order to test several theories, maybe the panspermia theory, the theory that life could have originated elsewhere and been imported from somewhere else in space to Earth. We look at the kind of mechanisms that exist in these very early examples of life. So these evolved well before we were around. So we want to expose them to the space environment and to see how they respond to stresses, whether or not life like that could have existed in space or fares well in space. And then if it does, that's a clue of what to perhaps look at. So in the quest for exploring further in space and trying to find life out there, we've got to know what we're looking at.
So ExoMars, the next ExoMars mission that's going in a few years' time, that will have a rover, the first European rover on Mars, and it will also, unlike Curiosity and the current NASA rovers, it will have a drill that can go up to 2 meters below the surface. So is it possible you could find the equivalent of this, smaller, not to scale, translucent, not pink, under the Martian surface?
Potentially, and that answers the why bother, because we might find something like that. But if we don't know what it looks like, then we don't know what to do.
When you say it's exposed to space, it's inside the station. It's not exposed externally. It's not
inside and externally. So there will be a new exposure platform that is currently in development, and these microorganisms will be in containers bolted to the outside of the space station. So they will receive a cosmic radiation dose, which is not shielded like it is inside the ISS, and several other stresses, temperature fluctuations, changes in UV, space vacuum. So they will be very much in space.
Can I ask you
hold on, I want to get to Armel now, because you know, we've talked about Mars and we've talked about Mars and ExoMars, and you've been working on the orbiter, and you've just done this aerobraking manoeuvre.
Yeah, I had a question to Nicole. I want to...
It's like trying to control free range.
Oh my god, this cable is free!
Oh my
Progress
god.
back.
No, I read about these worms that came back with 2 heads, one at the front, one at the back.
I know nothing.
Okay, alright, Armel, let's go from perhaps a science fiction film you've seen on TV to your Mars thing. Tell us, because the aerobraking manoeuvre, honestly, it's amazing. You've got it because it's so difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, okay. One of the main issues we've got with launching spacecrafts in space is fuel, because it's something which is finite, i.e. when you run out of fuel, that's it. And the problem with fuel is that it's heavy. So when you launch a spacecraft, you need a rocket, and the rocket itself needs fuel. The heavier the spacecraft, the more fuel you need. The more fuel you have, the heavier you get. The more fuel you need, the heavier you get. You see the problem. So the idea is to try and find a way to reach your target using as little fuel as possible. And one of these ways, when you go to a planet which has an atmosphere, is to do what we call aerobraking, which is basically like using the spacecraft as a sailing boat and use the surface of the spacecraft to brake the spacecraft. So with
and that's brake, B-R-A-K-E, not
yes. Well,
brake.
Yeah.
So is that quite like a supercar at high speed, when the air brake comes up at the back?
Spoilers.
Yeah,
exactly.
Same concept.
Exactly. So that's what we did with TGO, and it took us a year to do that. Mainly because it's our first time at EESA that we do that. NASA has done it several times, but for us it was the first time, so we were a bit careful with what we were doing.
I would better explain that TGO is the Trace Gas Orbiter, which is the name of the
first
European orbiter that's around Mars. Yeah.
Did NASA share all of their knowledge and technology with you?
Well, technology, not so much, but they gave us hints and tricks.
I think you'll find that at ESA they can do it quite well. Yeah. They can show you what not to do, because one of their famous Mars orbiters smashed into the surface because they used two different scales of measurements, so instead of landing it smashed into Mars. So I assume they told you use the same system of measurements for that one.
One of the things also they told us is you have to be extremely careful where you put your center of gravity on your spacecraft, because if you don't do it right, your spacecraft starts to spin and then you lose control and then it's game over.
And it's very difficult, you know. I mean, what you do is you get a spacecraft to Mars, and doing that in itself is hard for Mars in particular, because so many missions have failed to Mars because of that atmosphere, isn't it?
Yeah, well, because it's far away, so it's not easy. The smallest time delay that we have, so when we send a signal to Mars, the shortest time it can take is 4 minutes. So you cannot work in real time. It means you command something to the spacecraft, and by the time you see the answer, it's already been finished, done for minimum 4 to 5 minutes. So that's one of the difficulties with aerobraking, because you go in the atmosphere of the planet, you cannot communicate with your spacecraft anymore. And because it's an atmosphere, it's not always the same density. Sometimes you will break more, sometimes you will break less, and you don't know exactly when you will exit it's called an aeropath, so when you will exit the atmosphere again. The problem is that by the time you've gone around the planet and come back again, which at the end of the aerobraking was 2 hours, well, you have to be ready to go in again. So you have to have calculated where your spacecraft came out, how long it took, how much you broke, so that you are ready to dive in again. So that's quite a big challenge.
Can I ask you both a question really about the decision-making process? So both of these things involve an amazing amount of innovation and bold ideas and very expensive and long-term projects to carry out when someone has an idea. What's the process? How streamlined is it? How are there individuals at the top? Everything can't be decided by committee because it would be too slow. How difficult is it, or what is the process for someone to go, I think we should do this, and then and the process, the journey for that to be then carried out or tried?
Well, in biology or exobiology, there will be an announcement of opportunity, and that will be made public, and then proposals will come in from research institutions all over Europe with ideas. The ideas will then be forwarded to the relevant departments, and they will be scored on how feasible they are, how applicable to where we are in science they are, and yeah, so...
Individuals, if you dreamt one night, you went, wait a second, why don't we send actors into space? Whatever that is, but could you...
Are you applying for a job?
Could you submit an experiment by yourself? Would you need the backing of commercial companies, or...?
Traditionally, they come from universities and large organisations. An individual could put in a proposal, but science isn't an individual thing, and projects are teams. You know, projects, science projects work in groups, because say you want to, I don't know, you want to study this fungus and you want to send it to space. Not only are you going to have a mycologist, you need someone that can analyse the data, You need someone who knows about physics and dimensions and shapes. So you need to work in teams. So very rarely would you have somebody, I mean, sure, someone might put in an application, but there's strength in numbers.
So, but whereas if you've got something in orbit around Mars and you need to make an instant decision, there is a person in charge. There's a person that can make a bold,
well,
bold
there'll be
call.
people back down in Darmstadt, which is
Yes.
where
Which is our
is
team
based,
that we
which
work.
is where they make the decisions.
So
in
when there's a
Germany.
problem, normally we try to think beforehand of anything bad that could happen. So we really dream catastrophe scenarios on a daily basis.
Sounds really depressing.
No, but the idea is to solve them after.
what lawyers
You
do.
know, at the end we save the day always.
When there's a decision to be made on the hoof or a bold idea,
Yeah.
there's a single individual or there's a little team.
That depends very much on the urgency we have to solve the problem. So if we need an answer now, then
We'll take Rosetta because
Take
there
Rosetta,
was
yes.
a problem with Rosetta with the lander when you couldn't tell whether it had landed properly
Yes.
or not, and as it turned out, it had landed not once but 4 times.
yes.
So how long did it take then, in that instance, before knowing that this isn't quite what we expected, to then implementing right?
Yeah.
We're
Well, okay, we knew fairly soon that there was something wrong because there were alarms that were supposed to trigger in our system to tell us it's landed and they didn't. We also had the panoramic pictures that we wanted to take just after landing, which arrived and were all stripy, so because we were still moving. But there was nothing we could do. On one hand, because we had no idea where the lander was, we knew it was not on the surface, but was it coming back to the surface? Was it flying away? We had no idea. And also at that time, Rosetta was, if I recall correctly, about 20 to 25 minutes away from the Earth. So there is no such thing as real time. So even if we react like this, it's already too late. It's already 20 minutes old on the comet. So there's no need to rush, really.
Yeah. Now, Rosetta actually found quite a number of organic compounds on the comet itself. We've got an exobiologist here and somebody who's worked in outer space, even if fictionally.
Event Horizon was real.
Nicole, the science fiction has shown us lots of aliens. We've got Vulcans in Star Trek. We've got, all manner in Star Wars. I don't know whether you saw the film Arrival, but the alien in that looked more like a squid, a giant squid or an octopus. And in fact, I read that several scientists who worked on them have said that actually, if we wanted an example of alien life on Earth, the best example is the octopus. So if you've got, think of our Earth on the oceans, we've got the amount of life in the oceans. If we're going to planets and we're only looking using rovers on land, what if your microorganisms or your life is actually not in the soil, but it's actually in the areas where there are liquid, whether it's methane or water?
Well, that's totally plausible, and okay, I'm
You
imagining.
had thought of that before, she mentioned it.
Yeah.
Just checking. Oh, good. Phew.
I haven't seen Arrival. No,
It's
so-
great.
Yeah, okay. Another sci-fi film which I haven't seen, which everyone wants to see. I'm not big into sci-fi, but I work at Space Agency. I
I
know.
work in Cyreal.
Yeah. It would be very logical to look for life in aqueous environment. Why? You need a solvent for life. On Earth, you need water. So it makes sense to therefore look for look for life in aqueous environments. So it's not totally crazy to think there might be these little squiddy things. We just don't know. And with this drill that can go, was it 2.5
2 meters.
2 meters into the
Oh,
subsurface.
listen, Jason.
No?
I saw it before.
Oh,
They have a mock-up here.
excellent. Now, for you, fictionally, who is your favourite alien species in the Star Trek universe?
Well, in the Star Trek universe, I'm in a film called Event Horizon, which came out 25 years ago, which is a film about a ship that went into a black hole and came back, and went to hell and came back. And in that, there are video recordings of what had happened to the ship there, and you only see them for the odd frame in the final film. But in order to shoot that, they had a mock-up spaceship full of some of the strangest, most grotesque individuals who were prepared to do things that are illegal in every country on Earth. And they were shot for a whole morning, and every now and again the director would appear on our set going, "You won't believe what I just saw." Those are my favourite aliens. Those people who went hell back, they might have died, but they had a hell of a good time getting there.
What about you, Amel? What's your favourite sci-fi alien?
I think it must be the ones in Arrival. I like the fact that they are really different and that we can't understand them.
And they communicate with squidding in pictograms, effectively.
I mean, to me, it seems logical that there must be some form of life somewhere, which is just so alien that we cannot even imagine
it. Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's difficult to look for something that you can't even imagine. So we have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, you'll see patterns.
Now I've got a mystery box, another mystery object here. You all got the quibble. This tribble. This one might be a bit more difficult. It's have to be very careful with it. I want you to have a look at it. You can pass it round and have a guess what this is.
Oh, yeah. You tell. Obviously, it's the motherboard from the first iPhone.
Any ideas?
It looks like a solar panel.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. Any ideas?
Well, it's...
This actually, what about you, Amel? It's actually, please don't drop it, Sue. It is a piece of the solar array from the Hubble Space Telescope.
Oh.
This has actually been in space.
Do they know it's missing?
They do know it's missing.
Oh, good.
I assume it was brought down while it was being repaired, and it isn't a great big hole in that array. But yeah, so this has actually been into space and worked.
Did we just get irradiated by touching it?
Probably. Who knows?
That's not how radiation works.
No. So if you had the chance, Jason, to go into space or to work, would you rather have the glory being an actor, maybe you want the astronaut role, or would you want to work behind the scenes doing this incredible job that our guests
It's
do?
cool being a biologist. It's really cool.
I'm sure it is cool being a biologist. One of the things that is lucky about my job is that I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. And I get to walk in other people's shoes all the time, and I get to shadow people. So I get to meet, because I'm in Star Trek, I get to meet extraordinary people like you two and the other people, it's true, who do amazing things. And I get to shadow politicians and police and plastic surgeons and drug dealers and cops and soldiers. And so I'd like to do all of it, is the answer. Of course I'd like to go to space because I like jumping out of planes and doing exciting and dangerous things, but also I'd like to be solving the problems. I love solving problems. If I wasn't an actor, I think I would probably work in computing or something. I always loved everything to do with logical, reaching a solution, having, climbed through a difficult challenge. So I'm in awe of people who do real things in the real world. I pretend, but I do get to shadow people for a while, which is a great privilege.
And what about you two? Would you like to go? You work in space all the time. You help people get into space. You help spacecraft get there, and you're looking further afield to find life off this planet. If you had the chance, would you go off this planet? Because not every space engineer is.
Absolutely not.
Oh, there you go.
Mel, come on.
I'm sorry, I'm super scared of flying.
Well, how did you get here? Excuse me, one second. How did you get here? Did you fly here?
Yes.
How was it?
It was okay.
There you go.
That's not what you told me backstage. You said you were terrified.
Yeah. No. The flight yesterday was actually fine. But leading to it was...
Yeah, see, it's not everybody's cup of tea.
But wait a second, you're working in controlling the spacecraft. So if you're telling me you think it's actually not very safe, that's not...
No, she didn't say that.
No. I think the problem is actually when I fly a spacecraft, I know how to fly the spacecraft.
Right.
I don't know how to fly a plane.
So it's a control issue. Right. Nicole.
I'm the opposite. Absolutely would love to go to space.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just...
What's stopping you?
There's a few logistical problems.
Who here would like to go to space? If you want to go to space, yeah, we can understand
So
that.
I'm with the majority.
Is it true, because I've been genuinely been asking questions and the answers come back slightly complicated way, is it shortening your life? I mean, if you go to space, spend any reasonable amount of time there, are you making a sacrifice in terms of longevity?
Well, I know a little bit about that if you don't.
No, I don't. I mean, I work with small things, but they don't shorten, their lifespans aren't shortened by being in space, generally speaking. But for human research, I'm not sure. I know some.
There are physical effects that, as you're probably aware, that it does have on your body. And one of the more detrimental effects is what it does to an astronaut's eyesight. That some do have issues with their eyes when they come back.
Oh, I'd be hopeless then.
Yeah, yeah. And bone density can only go up so many times because of the amount of radiation that you get up there. And obviously, being in weightlessness, you lose your bone density, which is why they've been like Paolo Nespoli was here earlier. If you've been up for a prolonged period of time, then that's why you have to be carried from the Soyuz capsule. It's not just the horrendous bumpy so-called soft landing, it's the fact that everything has weakened, your muscles have weakened.
Wait, so your muscles, but your bone density is weakened because they haven't had to work as hard to hold you up.
Yeah, which is why they have to do 2.5 hours of 2 hours of exercise
So
every day.
If we all wore brick suits every day, we would be stronger and build ourselves up to look like the thing.
Oh, we'll have to.
I think
we
that's
need a
called
doctor
CrossFit.
here. We need a doctor here now. We definitely need a doctor here. Now, are there any questions? As we've got our three guests here, is there anything that people we've covered a huge array of subjects here. Are there any questions that you've got from one of our guests here that you would like to ask? Yes.
I'd like to see Doctor Who starts tonight, and have you ever thought of being in it?
All right. For people who can't hear, Doctor Who, famous British science fact. I think it's the longest science fiction program series in the world that's been going for the longest. It starts tonight with a new Doctor, a woman alluded to.
Yeah.
Have you ever wanted to be in Doctor Who, Jason?
Well, I was offered a Doctor Who. I didn't fancy the part because I thought the audience would see the surprise coming. To be honest, I turned out to be the bad guy. And the writer, who I know, who's a wonderful writer, also writes Sherlock, that's how talented he is, and as an actor, Mark Gatiss, written to me. And I said, Mark, I think the audience will see it coming. I'm desperate to be in Doctor Who. Let's wait till something's right. And he went, absolutely. And that was about 3 years ago, and he hasn't written back. But there you go. But I do think Jodie's going to be an amazing Doctor Who. She's a fantastic actress. And those numbers of people who came out the woodwork and went, what are we doing with a female Doctor Who? Need to wake up and look out the window and see the 21st century before them.
Well, it's also a bit funny. It's the thought that an alien can't be male and female. That's the weird bit about it.
Like the pink thing before, was
Yeah.
mostly female.
Well, talking about pink things and what they can be, what your path into working at the top of science in the various different fields you do, how easy was it? How traditional? How much are you breaking the mold for the people you grew up with? So Armel, you said it was very. You just did what you did.
Yeah, but I never really thought about it. I had a physics teacher who, when I was 15, 16, who told me, "Oh, space stuff. No, but you can't do that. You're a girl." So I just looked at him and I thought, "Yeah, right."
And now here we have spaceflight operations manager for all these missions. That's called Proving Dreamers. What about you, Nicole?
I went to a very average state school in North London and I performed very averagely. I left school at 16 because I didn't want school anymore. I had enough of that. Went to the world of work and thought, you know what, I really want to be a scientist. So I ended up going back to university and I went in through a foundation science route to bring me up to speed with everyone that had got their A-levels, not me. And then following on from that, entered into a bachelor's of environmental science. So in environmental science, I began specialising in biology and I got fascinated with plant science and plant biology. And at the end of that, my supervisor said to me, how do you fancy doing a PhD in that? And I was like, oh, that's a lot of work, but we'll pay you to do it. Okay. And through that, I then was introduced to space radiation and space biology and was just gripped by it. Got bitten by the space bug
Who doesn't? Who doesn't indeed? And in fact, we've had 3 people here who in their own way have all been completely bitten by the space bug. And in fact, 4 if you include me, because I do so much work with space and journalism myself. So let's give a big hand. First of all, thank you to Nicole Kaplan, our exobiologist from European Space Agency, and our spacecraft operations manager, Armel Thibault, and our very special guest, our Star Trek captain himself, wonderful actor Jason Isaac. Thank you very much indeed.